They've lost hundreds of millions or even billions on a failed park that didn't even open. A CEO was killed in just a few months after taking control, and the world knows about the big secret. Sarah and John probably have been doing a good job protecting the place for these past 4 years. Signs put up around the beaches, a perimeter buoy, and Coast Guards are... Oh. It's one of those sequels. 8 years, and we're dipping our foot into trouble for a third time. Why do the movies keep going back to the same old civilian plot? They shouldn't be able to get near the islands. Yeah, I remember the first thing we see is the big red restricted text. But it seems buoys, perimeter security, that super fancy satellite capable of scanning dinosaurs' thermal signatures from space, and of course the amount of people wanting to get a hold of basically an endangered species, there's nothing to be found that's called security. Also, what the hell is going on with people not even going to the island? When Grant's plane is detected in restricted airspace, no one is sent to investigate. You'd think Sarah and Hammond would have used InGen to continue documentation of the dinos. Hell, even try to gain money again by doing a David Attenborough Nat Geo type show, or at least have one emergency team ready to deal with issues. It's like movie 2 finishes and the characters stopped existing. Is it so hard to have a professional poacher team go in, say skydiving with thermal reflective suits, some sort of actual threat that wants to directly go after the dinos? I don't want to be all negative Nancy, but it's hard with this film. What's the good bits before I peck apart the bones? Writers, I will give you credit. You making fun of the things people had issues with in Lost World, your heart was in the right place, but you inadvertently made 20 other questions come up. The way Grant was brought back to the island, I like the idea of it. There was no freaking way he was going to go back there willingly. The characters of Paul, Amanda, and Eric, they were fine in their personalities, but not how they started this whole mess. Last, I thought it was a cool idea to showcase the Spinosaurus, something worse than the T-Rex. They knew going back to that well would get boring. That's a problem with sequels in general. And I didn't mind the idea of InGen making dinos that weren't on the list, but only so far. You have to stop at a point before it looks stupid. This movie is filled with stupid. Jurassic Park 3 continues from the events of the previous 2 films, bringing back Alan Grant, this time roped into a half-assed rescue mission to save a young boy for his desperate family. On the surface, it sounds like a good film. InGen's not even involved this time. It's one of those movies you want to like, but stupid happens all over the place. And the issues start 30 seconds into the film. JP2 created this problem. Now it haunts JP3. Where are the pteranodons? They should be flying around the island. There should be problems for anyone going near the shore. Next, it was nice that they had a more believable boat sequence where dinos can kill the crew, but now I have to assume InGen recreated aquatic dinosaurs like the Plesiosaurus, because there was no way in hell that any land dino would have gone on and off that boat without us seeing them from that high vantage point. There was no blood on the water to see a trail heading back to the island. No dinosaur eating the bodies in the distance. There's no other explanation unless you want to say an orca came up and attacked. So thank you for another problem like the pteranodons. Problem 2, bringing back Alan and Ellie. I like when the old characters come back, but they did it again. Ellie was the guest character like the kids in the last one. It sucks more when Alan and Ellie are alone in her home talking about the raptors and the stuff Grant's discovered of how they communicate. It started feeling like Jurassic Park 1 again. Yes, this is what I want. And no, wait, Ellie, no, don't leave me with Billy. Yeah, I know she gets the moment at the end, but even that's ridiculous in itself. That brings up, I think, the biggest problem JP3 had. Part 3 is a lot more comical compared to the first 2. They do have moments. The first film used it to break tension, give some characters quirks. I think when everyone loved how Ian had his funny bits, they wanted to add more of that in. So when we got to JP2, Ian had more of that. But then the third film went further, especially with the Kirby family and the mercenaries. They intentionally treated them as the people that could handle themselves, but once they landed, everyone fell apart. Half of them were lying what they did. Loads of moments had some goofy line stick out. Stop making everyone act like Ian. Ellie's boat rescue was half a joke. Even when people are killed, it inadvertently became a joke. The way Amanda was screaming at the remains of her friend, the longer it went on, it started to look hokey. Then the dumbest moment was with the goddamn satellite phone. I'll go into that more later because that scene is a total mess. This brought down the movie a full peg. Even Grant had his issues. One minute he's scared being trapped on Isla Sorna, but other times some of his dialogue is treated way too lightly, like he's in the mindset of the audience. Oh great, I'm in this mess again. He's almost like two different people. What about the story? I had my issues with JP too, but I'd say 70% of that movie is fine. This movie is like 40% good. Each element alone, Alan being forced on the island, Eric lost on the island, the raptors following them because of the eggs, and the new big baddie Spinosaurus, I like them, but all together, no. Billy, I almost forgot about him. He's Ellie's replacement. Hate to say it, but not a good one. At first, I liked him. He's obviously worked with Grant for a while, brought the tech element to paleontology, but Billy only acts as a plot device and a deus. He's not a fleshed out character enough. Eric and Nick in the second film were more characters and they had less screen time. All characters have a purpose in film, but they have to be people for their duty to the movie. Billy's just, hi, like me, oh, I did stupid thing, and yeah, I'm with Grant, I have to save Eric. This is why I was pissed off Ellie was missing. Why couldn't you introduce us to someone that is intentionally going after Dino Stuff for the egg plot line? This had to have been caused by the rewrites. I remember they wanted to bring up Nedry's embryo story again. Like, why didn't they do that? Obviously, Nedry was working for a company that was intending to get Injun's secrets, and this never gets used. The Kirby family. 50% of that story is good. The other half is bad. I like the idea of just regular people going through this. I didn't have an issue of Eric surviving for 8 weeks, but when the Kirbys said no one would help them, I'm going, where the hell is Sarah? Where the hell is Hammond? He busts out money for a fully prepared team that has to sneak onto the island before Injun's team comes in, and no one comes to help these people. I know why it happened, because then it would start feeling like JP2 all over again. That's why the story is stupid. You could have had the Kirby family story if you just rewrote it a little bit different. But no, let's destroy Hammond's penance and Sarah's goals with this island. The movie doesn't even handle the big reveals good anymore. The Spinosaurus is your new baddie. Usually you want to keep it mysterious, powerful till that big moment. Remember how the T-Rex took its time, then all hell broke loose? But the first time we see Spino is when Cooper gets chomped on the runway. They couldn't resist making a mini JP2 boat fiasco here. What do I mean? Nothing makes sense during the plane takeoff. They're teasing us with the Spino reveal so we don't see it clearly. This makes the editing total garbage. What happens? The Spino dashes onto the runway, grabs Cooper in its snout. Nash pulls up too hard on the plane, loses control, they crash into the tree. Let me slow it down. The Spino grabs Cooper in its mouth. Spino is the one now in the path of the plane. The low angle shot shows us the plane flying over Spino, but blood appears on the windshield. Whose blood is that? It can't be Cooper's. He's in the Spino's mouth at this point. So that only leaves they struck the Spinosaurus in the fin. One side of the plane should have been instantly ripped off, and one of the props should have carved out a huge piece of that fin or torso. But Spino has no injuries, nothing. So where did the blood come from? What the hell happened? There's only one Spinosaurus, so you can't give that excuse. Great movie, huh? It gets worse. It took JP2 half the film to fall into, and this happens, and this happens. JP3 starts 30 minutes in. Also, we have Deus fighting for on-screen dominance. In Lost World, they ran into an issue. That radio tower they used for rescue, they put in a line mentioning Island 2's compounds being powered by geothermal energy. I'm totally fine with that. The island does have a volcano, so it made sense. But now that's an inconvenience. No one ever attempts to try to restore power to the cryo-admin building to see if the phone system works. They would have known this. Ian would have wrote this in his book. Don't tell me he wouldn't put in all this heroic BS, and they used the books as ways for Eric to know who Grant is. So you set up the kid to know all this detail, him being very resourceful in this hellhole, but then, oh no, we can't think about movie 2, but they're cool doing that DUX satellite phone crap, right? It's like if they try to see if they could beat the JP2 boat stupidity level. Let's see. Somehow, the satellite phone survived being destroyed when Nash is eaten. Then it sits inside the Spinosaurus' stomach for several hours, doesn't get destroyed by that. Then it can receive a phone call through the Spinosaurus. Then the ringer is so powerful, it's not muffled by the stomach acid, its body, and can travel several hundred feet so that Grant and Kirby hear it. It doesn't stop. When the groups finally meet up with each other, there's a security wall in their way. What the hell is going on? I thought Site B was solely to create and breed the dinosaurs. Why would you make security pens? You would want to transport the dinosaurs when they're infants. Before anyone mentions, the transfer scene in JP1 was between the Raptor security pen to the viewing pens. That's different. This wall and the Pteranodon cage make no sense. It makes no sense even for a drama reasons. The fence issue ends in seconds with that hole. They might as well have just ran across the field. It just made everything worse because not only does it not add to the drama, the Spino breaks through it, but then it can't break through a wooden door. Holy crap at all the DUX stuff. I don't even want to talk about the Pteranodon sequence. Is it a cool sequence? Yes, but does it make any sense? From breeding them, having cage for them on Site B and not A, where are the holes that allowed them to escape, and why isn't there hundreds of them? We see so many Stegosauruses, Brachiosauruses, Triceratops everywhere around the island, but when it comes to stuff like this, there's one that they deal with and 3 that go after Billy. There should have been dozens because the area where the cage is huge. And the movie does this BS where they do a dramatic shot of the door opening. Are you serious, movie? You literally forgot what you showed at the end of Lost World. This movie is such a pile. I'm that red horned T-Rex shaking my head right now. Yeah, one last thing. The phone magically only has power for one more call. Even though it's been ringing all day, survived being digested through a freaking dinosaur, but now all of a sudden it sucks. Right, okay, I have to fix now. I was debating if I should erase the Kirby family or keep them. I decided I wanted to keep them, but the way they're put into the story is going to be different. My biggest problem was getting Grant on the island and Billy to not suck. How could I also service Ellie and Grant better? So I thought, why not have Grant be at her housewarming party? We would find out that Ellie had moved on from dinosaur bones while Grant was struggling in the field since everything has gotten screwed over by Jurassic Park. I keep the whole large meeting on Velociraptors, but include Ellie in the audience so that we get more time with them together, discussing whether he'll have a job in a couple of months, where we'd hear Ellie suggest Alan could go work for Hammond or Sarah, give us background on the 4 years since JP2. We'd still get the moment where Grant would say he'd never stepped foot on that island again. While this reunion is going on, a special team is being assembled to break into Isla Nublar. They would be working for the people who originally hired Dennis Nedry. I'd say it'd be 8 people, and one of them would be Billy, but not the Billy from the movie. Obviously, they're not going after Nedry's shaving can, because that would have lost power and whatnot. Instead, the small team is going to be taking DNA samples from various dinosaurs once they get in. One of the things they need is someone who's been on the island before to make their job easier. There were a ton of dinos left in the original park. How do they get on the island? Simple. They skydive above the no-fly zone. Grant is knocked out and brought along. The reason why I want to do it this way is that it restricts the team to bare essentials, so they can't carry a lot of weapons and other things. And to keep a ticking clock going, the team will have to assemble an emergency life raft to escape and rendezvous with a helicopter once out of range of the security. And if they miss the rendezvous time, the team is going to be forfeited and no one will come to rescue them. Because we haven't been back to Site A since the first film, the DNA team is overwhelmed. The island is filled with many more dinosaurs than expected. They've been flourishing over the 8 years. The action sequences, except for the pteranodons, I want to keep all of them. The first introduction has to be the Spinosaurus. I would keep it very similar to the actual movie. They would lose 2 team members and still do the T-Rex versus Spino fight, but instead the team stumbles into a T-Rex family and everything goes to hell. They lose 2 team members, one of the T-Rexes goes after them, they try to fight it off when a huge roar happens. This is the first time Grant talks to enemy Billy. He's the first guy on the team that allows Grant to give his input. He says the same line, "It sounds bigger." The T-Rex turns and heads to the sound, where we see the Spinosaurus eating the second T-Rex. The first T-Rex goes in for the attack. The DNA team takes this chance to steal from the corpse, and they quickly run their asses out, while the Spino wastes no time killing the other Rex. How does the Kirby family come into this? They were basically survivors of a plane crash that happened a couple of months ago. All these stacked problems now make everything harder for the DNA team. They cause the same type of issues they did in the original, but not as comical. This is how we would find the original park. They've been living in some of the few places that were still secured. We get to see a few of the old locations. The reason why we don't get to return to all the first film locations, the island has suffered a major earthquake in the last 8 years. Island 2 has a volcano, so we can say they're on an active fault line. With the disarray of the buildings, most things got destroyed, covering a potential plot issue being able to call for help. Grant would be the first one to bring up the power control bunker where Eric would say, "There's nothing left of that." Another problem for the DNA team would be dealing with choppers flying around the island. Through the 2 months, rescue teams have been attempting to find the survivors, but due to the large dinosaur population, the Kirby family can barely leave the visitor center, and any attempts to put smoke signals brought attention to dinosaurs. Most of the T-Rex population would be near the main building, which attracted the Spinosaurus in the first place. How do I keep the raptor plot going in this version? Their goal is to get samples from as many dinosaurs as they can, but in this case they couldn't find raptors. Instead, they found eggs, so they take several eggs with them. Grant from the beginning warns them, but they don't care. While this is all going on, Grant and the Kirby family are trying through the whole movie to figure out a way to escape. As the DNA team goes through various nests and fights, this comes to pass with the raptor eggs. I need something to replace the pteranodon sequence. I love the raptors, but we need something to trigger something else, something bigger, and I thought, why not introduce us to other raptor types like the Utah raptors? They're a different type of raptor that's much larger than the regular one, and with the eggs on them, they think regular raptors have invaded their area. So the raptors that have been following Grant and the others this whole time get into this huge fight between the Utah raptors. This is where the team starts falling apart. The commander wants to get as many samples as they can, going as far after the Spinosaurus again. They lost people in the raptor fight. Billy, being one of the few, is listening to reason, seeing this turn into some suicide mission. He more and more starts leaning towards Grant's side. The captain's eventually killed by the Spinosaurus, which then makes the Spino go after everyone. They lose most of their samples, the eggs, and I'm leaving the same boat sequence happens between them and the Spinosaurus. All this going on while they all have this internal war where eventually Billy turns to Grant's side. The Kirby family survives, Grant makes it out, but Billy, as his one final good deed, he sacrifices himself, dying to stop the Spinosaurus from getting them. Billy gives them the life raft and its emergency beacon, while Grant and the others finally are able to escape the island. This rewrite was extremely hard to do. It's because we've been through this 2 other times. I'm trying to make this feel different, bring back old characters, and give the story a little more sense. I now kind of understand why Michael quit working on JP3, because he was just so frustrated coming up with a story that's new, but feels like it's a proper continuation, doesn't feel cheap. It's just really hard to do. We've been through 5 movies at this point, and a 6th one is coming out soon. Jurassic World 1 and 2 made a lot of money, but the stories keep turning into mush at this point. There's very little left you can do with this franchise. I hope Jurassic World Dominion is the final movie to the series, and they call it quits. Some series, you just can't keep going back to it.